Welcome, Gunrunner.
Hello everybody, Q&A the Laird here, and this is going to be a sort of short intro to this video because I just wanted to explain really what I'm going to be talking about, and then I'm actually going to flip to some recording of my computer screen because it would be a better format to do this video in that way, so you can see what I'm talking about and I can highlight things and stuff like that. But the video title, I suppose, does give some of it away, but there is a bit of backstory to this video as well, and this is a bit of a change as well from the usual format of these Laird's Lowdown videos, because as you probably know, what I usually talk about in these is something that's in the gaming news that has kind of caught my eye, that I wanted to talk about or found interesting. But on this one, this is actually going to be more of a pure opinion video, because what I wanted to mention is actually something that's bothered me for a long time, and I have actually thought about doing a video on it before, and in the past I never really knew how to do that video, what was the best way to do it. But obviously now I'm doing these kind of vlog videos, I thought, that's probably the best format actually to do this. And then funnily enough, there was someone commented on one of my videos a couple of weeks ago talking about the exact same thing. And they were basically saying it was something that bothered them and they'd love to see more people talk about it. And I was like, yes. And I said to them, yeah, no, I'm going to do a video about this. I'm definitely going to do a video about it. And here we are. And that is the console generations. Because I have a real problem with the way the console generations are defined. Because to be honest, they don't make any sense. I don't know who came up with them. I don't know why they were decided to be like this. But they're utter nonsense, and I'm going to explain why. I don't want to explain too much why in this intro, because it'd actually be easier to be able to show you on the screen how those generations are currently defined, and then pick out obviously what is wrong with them and what needs changing, because they are nonsense. They really are, and it'll be interesting at the end to see whether you agree with my thoughts and views, and whether you think they should be changed too, because I think there's a very good case for it personally. But what I'll do now is I'm going to flick to my computer screen, and then you'll be able to see what it is that I'm banging on about. Righty ho, so here we are, and I'm using Wikipedia. Wikipedia isn't always that great. I have a lot of issues with Wikipedia and it being edited and being wrong in many aspects, because people edit it wrong, and the moderators don't often do a very good job of removing things that are wrong. And I've had stuff that I've edited on here that was correct with sources that was removed, them claiming it was wrong even though it had cited sources. And I actually gave up editing Wikipedia for that reason, because it was too out of control in terms of who could edit it and change things, etc. But for defining the various console generations, Wikipedia is ideal, because it very much lays it out really well. I haven't found another website that lays out the console generations as good as Wikipedia, so therefore we are going to use it for this. So that's just like a little chart that just shows the generations there, from when they started in the 70s up to the present day, and then it's got kind of showing the overlap between each generation, and then it goes into each generation. Now, while we're looking at this little graph here, the two generations that I have a big problem with are the second and third generation, especially. So second into third. So I think I've got a problem in there. Basically, I think there should be one in between, which we'll go into in a moment. And again, a bit later on, so from fourth into fifth, I also have a bit of an issue there as well. I think there should be another generation in there as well, which I'll go into. But my biggest problem is specifically with the second into the third, and we'll go down and I'll tell you why. So then it's got console history timeline by generation. So again, we've got like a rough kind of breakdown of what defined those generations, the years, what kind of technology they used, etc. And from here you can actually click to get to the actual generation, which is what I'm going to do. So, because I have a big problem with second into third, as I told you, and we'll see why. Now, we'll go down it to the bottom. It goes through all the consoles, and then you get this chart. Now, the beginning of the second generation, which mainly is marked by the fact that the second generation was the first to introduce consoles that used ROM cartridges. The first generation of consoles isn't really a first generation. I actually think it should start, first generation should be consoles that use ROM cartridges, because before that we had Pong clones and stuff. You know, they weren't real consoles because they only played one game. Although you do have the Odyssey in that first generation, I suppose, but that's not really playing ROM cartridges. It's just using jumpers to make it play different games. It's what the so-called cartridges that the Odyssey uses are not ROM cartridges. Unlike the Fairchild Channel F, which is the first console, of course, to use ROM cartridges, and more famously the Atari 2600. So we start here. So the second generation starts in November 1976 with the release of the Fairchild Channel F. Yep, all good. And then we also had the RCA Studio 2 after that, which they've not shown here because it wasn't a major one. And then into the Atari 2600, yep. Astrocade, yep, which is 78, it's a year later. Magnavox Odyssey 2, which also was 78, aka the Philips Video Pack, as we knew it in the EU, because we got it in Europe first, actually, before America. A lot of people didn't realise that. And then the Intellivision in 1979. So all these 5 consoles here are all from the 70s, all these early consoles. And that, for me, is the second console generation. Those consoles plus the RCA Studio 2, which was really all released in the 70s. I'd also add on the advanced programmable video system into that as well. So, you know, the Interton VC4000, Acetronic, you know, Radafin, all of those ones as well. They should be on there as well, which it doesn't show in that here. I think it does show them separately further down, actually. But yeah, they should all be that. Yeah, that is for me the second generation of consoles. Now, this is where I have a problem, because it also then goes on to include the following. Now, the Emerson Arcadia, released in May 1982. The Emerson Arcadia hardware is an upgrade of the hardware from the advanced programmable video system, which I already talked about. Same Signetic CPU, different graphics chip that can do a bit more. So it's an upgrade of that hardware. So because it's an upgrade of that hardware, it doesn't really fit in the same generation of it, does it? It's an enhanced version of the same console. So I don't believe it should be the same generation at all. The ColecoVision. The ColecoVision, put it alongside the Fairchild Channel F or the Studio 2. It's night and day. Compare those games. How can a Coleco game that looks, say, as good as something like Smurf be the same generation as Noughts and Crosses on a Fairchild Channel F? It's nuts, right? You can't put them in the same generation. It just does not make any sense. And then you've got the Atari 5200. How can the 5200 be the same generation as the 2600? I mean, again, night and day. You've got a console with the 5200 that, you know, that had a 256 colour palette. It had 4-channel sound. I mean, how is that the same generation as consoles that had like 8 colours and a beeper, you know, that could barely do any sound? You know, it was 16K of RAM, not bytes like a lot of the early consoles had. The Vectrix is a bit different because the Vectrix is a vector console using a different display, but the Vectrix is certainly a lot more advanced than, say, the RCA Studio 2, which is a black and white screen as well, right? It is nonsense for them to be the same generation, in my opinion, those groups of consoles. And when you add in something else, I noticed, it makes it even more stark. So, if we look at the release date of the Fairchild Channel F, the Fairchild Channel F came out in November 1976, as I already mentioned. The first console from this second lot, this second half of what they call the second generation, May 1982 for the Emerson Arcadia, right? So that's 6 years. 6 years in between those generations. How can they be the same generation with a 6-year gap in between them? It's mad. It is absolutely mad. I don't understand how they can be considered the same generation. It doesn't make any sense. So here's the others. So it does have the RSJTD2 there from 77. And as I say, the advanced programmable video system from 78. And obviously the VC4000 is an advanced programmable video system, same console range. Oh, the APF, the Imagination Machine, yeah, that's in that console generation as well, because that came out in 78. So with the Bandai Supervision, for that matter, and the Epoch Cassette Vision, the original one from Japan. They would go into that second generation, in my opinion. And then the new third generation, VTech Creative Vision, would go in there. It's pretty comparable with the ColecoVision. There's the Compact Vision TV Boy. There's also the Epoch Super Cassette Vision, which would go into that category as well. So, yeah, and then it goes into handhelds from that generation. Don't have a problem with any of those. But, yeah, I think you can see my point now in terms of how can they be the same generation of consoles. There is no way that the Atari 2600 and the 5200 should be the same generation of console. And there's no way that the Fairchild Channel F is the same console generation as the ColecoVision, because it's just night and day between them. The technological leap from, say, the Fairchild to the ColecoVision is as high as you'll find in any console generation, in my opinion. I think it probably is the highest, because I think the difference is so huge. It's much bigger than the jump from, say, SNES and Mega Drive to PlayStation. You know what I mean? And Saturn, in my opinion, which a lot of people often cite as the biggest leap. So let's go back, because I want to go to the next generation. Okay, so as I said, I also have a problem with the 5th into the 6th generation. The 4th into the 5th. Getting myself mixed up now. And I'll show you why here, into the 4th, into the 5th, really. Well, it's really the 5th. That's what we're looking at, the 5th generation. So this is where I have a problem. But again, I think there should be a generation in between the two. That's what I'm kind of getting at, like I did with the last one. And I'll explain why. I don't think this is as open and shut as the first case, where that it's night and day, as I say, between the Fairchild Channel F to ColecoVision, and I don't know how they can be considered the same console generation, because they really aren't. And this one gets a little bit more complicated, but I still think there is a very good case here for there being another console generation. Now, that's because the beginning of the 5th generation is not well set out here in terms of what I want to explain. But it began with the 3DO in October 1993, the Jaguar, which was it's down here, there you go, the Jaguar in November 1993, so just after. We also had in 93, if it's got it here, the CD32. That was the first one actually in 93. So we've got the Amiga CD32 from 93. The FM Towns Marty was February 93. So actually that was before the Amiga CD32. So those are all the 93 consoles. You've got like 5 consoles from 93. Now, some people may say CDI as well, and I think that's where it gets a little bit complicated, is the case of the CDI. This is what throws my theory out a little bit, which I'll go into, because basically a lot of this is the change from CD to cartridge consoles. That's a big part of the change. Obviously the Jaguar was a cartridge console, but also had a CD add-on. And that's why some people would say the CDI should be there. But the Philips CDI was a 16-bit console, and the CDI would be comparable with, really the Mega CD, I suppose, or the PC Engine Duo. So I believe the CDI would remain in that 16-bit generation, the one before. And this is it, 5th generation would be, would start with the FM Towns Marty, then the Amiga CD32, then the 3DO Jaguar 32X, as we go. Now, the reason why I'm saying that, and this is where it starts to get a little bit more complicated, I suppose, because I don't believe that the Jaguar and the 3DO and CD32 Marty, etc., are the same generation as the Saturn and the PlayStation.
Now, there isn't a huge difference in the power of the consoles, not massive. Although, you know, it was the ability to do proper 3D. The 3DO could do pretty good 3D, but not compared to, say, the Saturn or the PlayStation. A lot more limited. And the Jaguar especially was a lot more limited in terms of 3D than the Saturn and the PlayStation. But where this gets complicated, another reason why I think this generation should be split, and I do think there was an earlier generation, late generation, is there's a few cases. So Sega had the 32X, that came first, then the Saturn. I don't think the 32X and the Saturn should be the same generation. The Saturn's a lot more powerful than the 32X. But one of my main reasons for this theory on this one is the N64. This is what throws it out a lot. Now, when people talk about the big three from that generation, they talk Saturn, PlayStation, Nintendo 64. The Nintendo 64 came out on June the 23rd, 1996 in Japan and didn't come out in North America till September of that year. Now, we go down back here a minute. The Jaguar is here. The Jaguar was discontinued in April 1996. So therefore, we have a console that was discontinued before this one was even released. So the Jaguar was no longer on sale, no longer had games being made for it. In fact, Atari had left the console market completely when the Nintendo 64 came out. Yet they're considered the same console generation. To me, that doesn't make any sense. It was pretty similar to the 3DO because that was discontinued pretty much as the N64 was coming in as well. The 32X was dead by the time the N64 came in as well. That had also gone from the market, as had the Amiga CD32, which is down here somewhere, isn't it? That had gone. They'd left the market. That was only on the market for about 6 months anyway because of Commodore going bust. So therefore, you've got one. I don't know when they stopped making Marty games, but they probably already had by then anyway. Because the problem with the Marty was that the FM Towns games stopped being compatible with the Marty because the FM Towns hardware was being upgraded, but the Marty hardware wasn't. So you've got, 1, 2, 3, 4 consoles basically that had been completely discontinued by the time the latter consoles in this generation came along, like the Nintendo 64 in 1996. I believe the Pippin was quite late. Yeah, so the Pippin was 96 as well. So you've got two consoles there that were around when most of these earlier consoles in that generation were no longer on the market. So how can that be the same generation? To me, for consoles to be the same generation, they would have to have been sold alongside each other. That's as far as that I believe that's how it should be. If they should have all been on the market at the same time, being sold alongside each other. They should have been rivals to each other. The N64 was never a rival to the Jaguar or the CD32 or the 32X. It just wasn't. So therefore, for me, that console generation should be split into two as well as the last one. And I'm going to add one little caveat on here in terms of the generations, because there is one I think, and I think other people might bring it up, so I'm going to come back to it. I just want to mention this bit very briefly because I think some people will mention the 6th, because you have got the Dreamcast and the Xbox in the 6th, and the Xbox did basically replace the Dreamcast, didn't it? So therefore, I do think, yeah, there's an argument to be made there, because the Xbox was very, very late in that generation. But I don't see how that generation you could define it any differently. So therefore, I'm not going to go into that. But that's it, really. That's my theory. So I think the first generation, that I'm perfectly fine with what's in the first generation. The second generation should be split in two. So the second generation should have the third generation should actually be the second half of the second generation. And then the 5th generation, again, should also be split in two, because I believe that was 2 generations as well. So that's where my theories are. I'd love to hear your thoughts, because I think it's an interesting topic to discuss. And particularly, I'd really like to hear your arguments against mine for anyone who thinks that those console generations shouldn't be split. And I'd love to know why you think those generations shouldn't be split, because it'd be interesting to hear your arguments. I always love to have these kind of discussions on my channel. But that's it, really. I hope you found this video interesting. I can't wait to hear your thoughts. I've been the Laird, and I'll see you all again for another video very soon. Thanks for watching. Bye bye.